Hello and welcome to another episode of Fundy Tidings. I'm your host Jay Remer, and with me today is Judy Murphy, the Executive Director of Elizabeth Fry, New Brunswick. Welcome to the show, Judy.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I had heard about the Elizabeth Fry Society years ago in a context I can't recall, but recently, I saw a headline on social media that Judith Mackin, who is a friend of mine, had made a generous donation to your organization. So it caught my eye, and I thought, what is this all about? And so I sent her a note and asked her, you know, what was the deal, and she gave me your contact information. And I went to the website, and I was absolutely impressed and amazed, and I thought, why don't I know more about this? This is such an important group. So that's what prompted me to call you, and so I really appreciate you coming down to talk to us about this really important organization. So, and I understand that this organization, the Elizabeth Fry Society, has branches or offices across Canada, and has for some time. So what I'm wondering is what is the Elizabeth Fry New Brunswick story and mission?
All right, so there are 24 Elizabeth Frys across the country. We have a parent organization in Ottawa, the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies. It's a mouthful, we call it CASE. And each have a little different mandate. So each society is really responsible for doing the work within their region or province or general area. And then the national body has a slightly different mandate where it looks at some of the bigger systemic issues, advocacy issues, and so on. So for us in New Brunswick, we like our focus is really to work with women and gender diverse people who may be impacted by the criminal justice system.
And how many women and gender diverse people do you currently serve? And is there sort of a backlog? Are there a lot of people still to reach? It seems to me that the answer is going to be yes, but I'm just curious as that I'm a numbers guy, so I like to get an idea.
Well, I would say at any given time we probably have 25 to 35 people on a roster that we're currently working with. But I think a more accurate reflection might be the number of contacts. So within a month we would have, for instance, approximately 200 contacts. So one person may require more attention, more individual help than others. So it varies. And I think you named it earlier. If you hadn't heard of Elizabeth Fry, I think others haven't either. So part of our challenge is to have people understand that we are there. We are there to serve the province. And how do you reach us?
Right. So what exactly do you do? In other words, you mentioned women and gender diverse people, but what is it about that demographic that you do to help them?
Well, the focus is primarily those who have been impacted by the criminal justice system or could have the potential of being impacted by the justice system. So it's a whole range from meeting people early on. They may be transitioning through the court system, so we support them through that piece. It may be they're either, if they have been sentenced, it may be served in the community, or it may be in a correctional institution. And then the story doesn't end there, though. So we want them back. And so we help with that transition back into the community. So I would say in a very short way that we help women and gender diverse people through transitions as they're impacted by the justice system.
That is quite something. For the benefit of those who don't understand the term gender diverse, would you elaborate on that just a little bit so we know what this demographic actually is?
Yes, and I can also perhaps just explain a little bit of how we came to name women and gender diverse people. When I first started with EFRI, the focus was on being women-centered, working with women in the same context throughout the as being impacted by the criminal justice system. But over time, and as social awareness became, well, there just was a greater awareness of gender wasn't defined so simply as men and women. And it shifted. So as we explored this and we heard more of the voices within the institutions, we realized that our mandate is really to help anyone who is in a federal or provincial women's prison, as it's now named. So it really expands the whole definition. It is much more inclusive of anyone who defines themselves as beyond woman. So it may be, non-binary. It may be someone defines themselves as two-spirit or transgender. So it's much more inclusive.
Right.
And yet for those who are still, as I say, transitioning through the criminal justice system, and yet from us as an organization, we still say we take a feminist approach, which recognizes that there's still an imbalance of power in society that goes way back, and we need to address that. So we can't be everything to everybody, so we try and define it within those boundaries.
So I'm taking away from that you are an advocacy group. And so people who, and I know that navigating the criminal justice system, even for a petty crime, can be really challenging and frightening. And so you step in and kind of hold their hand?
In a sense, yes. We do advocacy. We do it on a broad level. So we may be part of our national team, or we have an Atlantic advocacy group as well that addresses the systemic issues that impact those who are in prison. So really monitoring the conditions of confinement within prison. So it may be looking at the whole issue of strip searching, for instance, or the overrepresentation of Indigenous populations. But then for us as a regional agency, a lot of our work is more advocacy on a one-on-one basis. And we do that whatever it takes. So it may be the hand-holding in court, but it may be also finding the proper resources for someone to get the supports they need in court.
Finding a lawyer or whatever.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And usually it's not, again, the issues are complex, so often we will learn some of the other barriers that will face them as they go through the court process is they may not have a home, they may be homeless. And so we can also provide that support. We can perhaps find them housing, because we do have housing, but we also can say the Elizabeth Fry Society is here in court to tell the court that we can provide supports in this, and this. So that helps give that wraparound services if they don't have those resources on their own.
That's wonderful. That really is. That must relieve a tremendous amount of suffering from people who are struggling through this system. That's just, it's quite amazing.
And I have to just interject, because I said
Yeah.
we don't do it alone. So we're not solo people. We don't have the resources or the energy, and so it's really important for us that we have that collaboration with our community partners that we do. And the community is there for us to provide that support.
So I read about the community partners on your website, and I was just wondering, who might they be? I mean, an example of the type of organization that you partner with.
All right. Well, it depends again on the context and the needs, because it's so diverse. But for instance, if we're providing housing, our house that we have, our apartments, we call it My Place, is in partnership with the Housing Alternative. We have also partners through that, through the Human Development Council. We have community partners such as Fresh Start Services, the Learning Exchange. So it depends on what the needs are, but we're very grateful to be able to have those links, and we work very, very closely together.
And it's a non-governmental situation, right? Like you don't do you have advocacy, do you have any kind of relationship with any government departments?
Not specifically. We do, depending on, we do have certain projects that are very much related directly, but I would say overall with our work, no, we're more dependent on the nonprofit sectors, and also other resource people such as the university and foundations too.
Do you find this is such a fascinating topic. Do you find this, the work that you do here is also acts as a community building exercise?
Oh, I believe so, and it may start with an individual that we're supporting in a certain capacity, whether it's returning back to the community or, as you say, going through the court system. Most definitely, we have a very strong organization with the other three Elizabeth Fry's, for instance, in Atlantic Canada. So while a woman is in prison, then we have the support of the 4E Fry's to do that. But in the community, a woman may come to us through one of the other agencies that are recommending, well, it's time that you perhaps speak to folks at the Elizabeth Fry Society, and then conversely, as I say, if there's a special need that another agency can fill, then we do.
It occurs to me that someone who has been incarcerated or someone who is skirting that whole arena has got some serious, likely some mental health issues, whether it is an actual illness or whether it's just weak mental health. And I would imagine that part of the rehabilitation of these individuals is through the help of mental health professionals. And it's not a secret that there are not enough mental health care professionals, not only in the province, but in the world.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering how you cope with that, because that has to be very stressful and frustrating at times. And I'm just curious as to how do you deal with it?
Well, we find, again, when an individual comes our way or sort of through our doors for support or help, or whether we meet them in the courthouse or whether we meet them in the institution, that it's not simplistic in the sense that it may be a mental health issue. So we look at a whole intersection of challenges, such as gender-based violence. We look at mental health. We see addictions. We see a sense of disconnect or social isolation. And so it's a complex piece because it is intertwined. So for instance, if someone is homeless and in going to court, that just exasperates the mental health. So there's a sense of aloneness, there's a sense of anxiety, and so on, and that can be exacerbated whether you're homeless, or perhaps that can be exacerbated just by being in the confinements of a prison. So we start with each individual, just where they are, and for us it's a collaboration. So it's a working with, and the biggest thing is developing that relationship so that you can unpack many of those layers to know where the best place to come in to start.
It is a complex thing, and it is a huge challenge. And I mean, we all take our hats off to you for doing this. It's quite extraordinary. So one of the questions, though, that I wanted to ask you, and I promised I would say to the questions, how do generational poverty and stigmatization affect your clients? And does that affect your demographic of clients, do you think, in a different way than the general public?
Okay, I think certainly the intergenerational poverty is huge. We see that in a number of projects we're doing. We have one now, for instance, where we're doing an intergenerational project in two of our priority areas in St. John, addressing that whole sense of social isolation, loneliness, and it's bringing seniors and youth together. And it's been a challenge because of COVID, but we're doing it, and we're doing it through Zoom, but they're still connected. In that sense, there is a pattern of intergenerational poverty, but we see how it's exasperated again by other things that are happening around us. But if we can untangle that, and just by addressing that sense and isolating that opportunity for two seemingly separate groups to connect, it's absolutely brilliant when we see the outcome of that. So if I could use an example, we had one opportunity this fall to bring a school group and the seniors together, but because of COVID, it was restricted, but also it was a very, very cold day. We were going to have them meet outside. So in this facility, there was a whole range of windows, fortunately, along the hallway. So the children were outside. They were fairly well dressed. And the seniors then stayed inside out through the window. And we had two facilitators, one outside, one inside. And so through pantomime, the two were able to connect and engage in different activities. And the power of all this was at the very end, one young boy outside, there's a grade 3, asked one of the facilitators if he could borrow her phone. She connected with the one inside. They had speakerphone. And he said, I just want to tell you that I'm very sad now because I have to leave you. This was grade 3. Then, before that, one of the children put their hands against the window, and the seniors inside started to match the hands. And then they did this movement. And it was just profound. So it just shows it sometimes it's small actions and the correct environment or circumstances that can shift things dramatically. So I just use that as one example of
It's an amazing example, and I would imagine that the third grader will never forget that experience.
No.
And that's so wonderful. That's the kind of experience that all third graders would benefit from. So that's a wonderful.
Well, and the seniors as well.
And the seniors as well.
Piece.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Because we are in an epidemic of loneliness.
Absolutely.
And it's probably more so for seniors than it is for kids, because kids have got school and brothers and things, and it is anything that we can do to break that, and as you say, it doesn't take much. It's I remember when these lockdowns and everything began, and people were suddenly not allowed to go in to see their loved ones dying. And I thought, this is a huge wrench. I mean, this is really going to affect people. So when you would see them crying and waving from the outside and all that, it can't help but affect even the coldest hearted person. And so this is a heartwarming story.
But I'd like to add another one too, to come back to this whole layer of criminalization that impacts, and certainly as a direct relationship to the intergenerational poverty. So we help women and gender diverse people that come our way with applying for a record suspension application, which is quite onerous. It's very detailed, it's complex, it's daunting. And people come to us, they have and they tell us they carry this sense of shame, of having a record. It's a huge embarrassment. And in itself almost creates a way that they feel they have to pull back from sort of general society because they feel they're different and they're labeled. One woman said, I feel I walk around town and I have a P stamped to my forehead with parole. But that they carry. And so when they come to us for help for applying for this record suspension, it's incredibly expensive. So the application alone now is $654. And then on top of that, you've got all your other periphery expenses. So it can add up to, over $800 by the time you're done. So imagine you have a criminal record. If it has been a summary offense, in other words, you've been in prison, say, under 2 years, or your offense is less than 2 years, you have to wait 5 years before you can even apply for this. So you're coming out and you can't get a job because you've got a criminal record.
Right.
You're a mom, you've got your children, and the majority of incarcerated women, or mothers, I should say, are the single caregiver of the family. So here you have a single mother with children who is not able to readily get a job that is sustainable. And so you're keeping them, and the children as well, in that cycle of poverty. So then you add on the other stressors because of that, and you're just trying to exist, adding the shame of having a criminal record, and then on top of that is just the day-to-day stress, the anxiety, depression that you may encounter as a result. And then sometimes people will look for other ways, if they're not getting the mental help support that they need, they may turn to other means to alleviate that. So it perhaps be addictions or some other form of doing that. So you can see how that intersection.
So it's a two-way street
issues,
here, really.
It's huge.
It's like a highway. You can have you can wind up in the in jail for having committed robbery, say, and then you come out, and because of the situation you're in, it could lead you to drug use, alcoholism, some addiction.
Or the addictions may have contributed to.
That's right. It can
to
go,
your being. So
it can go both ways.
It's the complexity of
That's
it
right.
all.
Yeah.
And so we deal with the individual, and we do it in it's certainly a non-judgmental way where we are very clear about meeting that person where they are. And it is, as I say, it's a collaborative engagement. What do you need? What do you need when? And go forward from there. On the other hand, we try and change things at the more the social level. So raising community awareness about what it means to be criminalized. What's the profile of people who are in a women's prison? And it often comes back to most are moms, most are single moms. One of the statistics for those in the federal prison, we had 24,000 children in Canada are children of mothers who are incarcerated.
Oh my. Which
is huge. And 5% of those children are remaining in their original home. So when you talk about intergenerational poverty, it's an individual story, but it's also our social story.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
It is huge. And I think, it could lead to a much broader discussion because reforming the whole prison system is something that is going to be what I put it on my list of inevitabilities. It has to happen. When it's going to happen is but if those people in prison were to be rehabilitated in prison and made whole so that when they left they wouldn't be where they are today, it would be a huge step forward.
And I would suggest one further step forward, and certainly from an Elizabeth Fry perspective, is we would like the people in the women's federal prisons to be in the community, not in the prisons.
Right.
So investing that money in the prisons, let's reinvest it in the community and keep people within that community context with families, etc. So that's our goal. Yes.
Judy, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to talk about how people can become involved in the society as volunteers.
We love volunteers. Yes, absolutely. We can't do it without them. So they can call us. You can find us on our website. Leave us a message on the website you're interested. Our website has our phone number and contact information. You can reach us.
And the website is efrynb.ca.
That's right.
And we will post that on the...
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. No, please reach out. And we really try and encourage our volunteers to participate in ways that they get excited about and what they can bring to us. Yes.
So there's a variety of different opportunities for volunteers, because I have a feeling that there are a lot of people who this will resonate with, and they would like to be part of the solution.
It'd be wonderful. There's never enough people. And now we have our new gathering space that we're developing so that our residents and those in the community can come together. We want to do community cooking together, and so we'd love to have volunteers come and help with that and do other activities on site. So lots of things to do. Elizabeth is our court support person, and she's doing a training series around the province to train volunteers to go in and do the court support. For
Oh,
instance.
fantastic. Well, that's great. Well, I'm sorry that I don't have more time to talk to you about this. It means that I'll have to have you back if you'd be willing to come so we can talk a little bit more about the organization, because I know you have a tremendous number of resources available to people, and that can be found on the website. And there are some initiatives that the Elizabeth Fry New Brunswick is undertaking, and we might chat about those too.
That would be wonderful.
But
to
in
have
the
that
meantime, I
opportunity.
really appreciate you coming down. I hope people take an interest in your organization as I encourage them to do. So thank you very much for coming down. And thank you for watching the show today. And I look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Fundy Tidings.